Well, thank you all for joining. I'm Sandra Nam. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Association Marketplace, which is powered by Kiko, the event platform we're using today. And we're very excited to have this first AMS vendor showcase and tech strategy session led by our team here at the Association Marketplace, Misha Getter and V. Lee. And we're very excited to have you and share with you some strategic approaches to looking at your AMS. And I'm going to pass the baton on to V, my colleague here, who will do a more proper and probably a better introduction for the event today and what's expected. But I do want to share with you that I'm also here as your tech support friend. So if you have any questions or anything about where to access content or information, please feel free to reach me in the chat or via email or anytime. So I'll let you take it away, V.
Thank you so much, Sandra, and thanks everyone for joining the Association Marketplace very first virtual demo event. I hope you learn a lot from the content that we curated together for the participants in the room. My name is V, and I'm the Engagement and Professional Growth Advisor at Kiko, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to our keynote address. We know that, the right technology investments start with the right strategy. So we want to set the scene with some of the tech strategy narrative before you enter the demo that we have outlined for you. Hence, we want to invite Moira Edwards, who is the president of Ellipsis Partners, and she works exclusively with associations and nonprofits on digital and technology strategy. She joined Ellipsis Partners after 15 years as a senior association staffer. So not only she speaks the language, but she also has that technology understanding and background so that she can set the scenes for us. You probably see Moira a lot within the ASAE universe, and she's also the co-founder of the Association Women Technology Champions. I encourage you to check them out if you haven't come across the group yet. Now, in this keynote address, Moira will really focus on looking beyond system selections, and we'll consider how technology change will address, association challenges so that we can fully embrace technology as a transformations way for us to enable us to achieve our strategy and growth. We trust that this keynote will provide you with valuable insights as you shape your tech strategy moving forward. So Moira, the floor is yours, and I hope you guys enjoy the presentation we have in store for you.
Wonderful. Thank you, V, and welcome everyone to this wonderful new event. Delighted to see all the different locations, people saying hello in the chat. Maybe you could also add, what do you hope to get from today? What's your goal in being here today? I'm going to share my screen here, and I think like you, I'm keen to see demos from systems, particularly that focus on smaller associations. And today I really want to put these demos in a larger context. So we're thinking beyond system selection. And I want to do that because when we start looking for a solution, we can get very focused, right? We identify the need and we focus on the options and the solutions. And that can be great. That can be a way to drive forward, to get things done. But there's also the risk of losing situational awareness, which interestingly is a term in military, losing awareness of the entire situation, maybe in a threatening or combat location. But it's also a term in meditation about having a greater awareness, right? And both of them are about sometimes when we get very focused, we lose a sense of the bigger picture, the why behind what we're doing. We worked with a small organization, maybe 12 staff, and 3 years before they met us, they had gone to their first AMS. So before that, they'd been using spreadsheets to manage 47 members as a trade association. And for their very first AMS, they went from spreadsheets to Salesforce. And that's a huge system. And they did it without a real understanding of what organizational capacity they would need to support Salesforce. And they did it as well. They did it thinking it would do everything, membership and events and community, but they didn't necessarily understand how well it did all those things and how well it would do online community. So they kind of got overly focused on a set of requirements. I think the thing that we also do is that we begin to think in a very linear way when we start on a technology project. And of course, a project timeline really helps us think that way. It's very clear with lots of good steps. But in fact, you know, this is a very complex endeavor. And these are complex systems. Many of the lovely companies you see today have great technologists that have made it simple for us to use their systems, but they're highly complex behind the scenes. And also, when we think of all the things that have to be done beyond the system, when we think about the data and cleaning it and migrating it, when we think about our members and preparing them for the transition, communicating with them, when we think about our staff and training them and having them adopt a system, there are a lot of moving parts. So what I'd like to do today is to give you 5 strategies. There's a bit of an S theme going on here today, of ways to keep awareness of all the things we need to think about in managing technology and finding a partner for the long term. So we're going to talk about the problems you're solving, all the different types of problems. We're going to talk about broader considerations for selecting the systems, not just maybe requirements. We're going to think about the people that you need to support this technology change, the tactics for sustaining that technology change, and finally, how you can really capitalize on your new technology and surge forward. Let's start with solve. So if you're looking for a new system, it's probably because things are in some ways broken right now. And if we don't recognize what's broken, then there's a chance that we will end up back in the same place. So what we want to do is really think about all of the different problems we're here to solve. And we start by thinking it's a technology issue, which it is, because the events are hard to set up, or we're spending a lot of time in Excel. But it's actually likely that that technology problem is impeding operations. That's what's raising it to the level of a problem that really needs to be solved. And staff are the ones like spending a huge amount of time registering people behind the scenes because the events are not set up the way they want, or taking a lot of time in Excel creating the reports because the reporting is not what they need. But that operations it's really likely that that's also impacting the member experience. They're calling you up to get registered or to update data. And so this technology issue becomes a member value issue. Are they getting the value out of your organization? And that can grow. That, this can be a retention issue. If they can't log in to your webinar, will they come back to your next webinar? Right? So it becomes that they can begin to drop off, and that can become a revenue and even a reputation issue. I've been with an organization as a staffer where we had such a huge technology failure that our president and CEO at the annual meeting was standing up there in front of thousands of constituents. And the first thing he had to say was, "I'm sorry about that technology failure. We're working to fix it and it'll never happen again." Like the whole place was silent. That's a reputational level issue. But in a less visible way, but almost as critical, one organization did benchmarking of data for members. And one member said, "If I can't trust you to log me in successfully, how can I trust you with my important data?" So when things get this troubled, the problems get this large, becomes, as I said, reputational issues, which then rise to the level of the board and strategic priorities to fix them. And particularly as you think about new technology, now they're thinking about new initiatives when we get past the problems. So this gets bigger and bigger. And what can, in some ways, undermine it all is going to be culture. So we're working with an organization right now, and they are working to replace an AMS. And it is an aging system. It is ripe for replacement. But one of the real issues with the current system is that it was never fully adopted by staff throughout the organization. So in this case, one of the key problems that we have to help them solve is culture. And addressing all of these is key to part of a successful implementation. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat. What problems are you working on to solve in your organization? What are some of the issues beyond a technology issue? What are some of the issues that you're working on? And I get a chance to look at the chat, and I see being inspiration and strategic thinking. Hi, Nikki. Using AMSs. All right. What problems are you working on? While you think about that, if you get a chance to write in the chat what problems you're working on, I want to think about another key question that relates to this, and that is, do you have the authority to solve these problems once you have them identified? Because some of us here do have that authority. We're either, like in an executive director role, or we're at a senior enough role in the organization that we have inherently the problem or the authority to solve many of these problems, to move the organization forward in many different fronts. For others of us, we probably have to be given that authority explicitly. When I was a staffer in an association, I would have to write out a business plan and identify, here's the technology that we need to change, here's what it'll cost and the staffing I need. And when that business plan was approved, I then had the budget and the people and the resources to do that. So I was given the authority. Sometimes we have to win authority. That's kind of interesting. A very wise boss once said to me that office politics is simply understanding the pressures that others are under. Like, oh, so I was having a lot of pushback at the time from our marketing communications team because they didn't want to market our product the way I wanted it marketed. And I went over to them, and the words from my wise boss ringing in my ears, I said, what are you trying to achieve? What kind of pressures are you under? And he was like, oh my gosh, well, we have this whole new branding initiative and all the brands have to be consistent and it has to be this color and this framework. And I'm like, okay, so if I fall into your branding strategy, can we then do this marketing strategy? She's like, oh yeah. So I got what I needed, which was a win-win situation, and actually a much better design brand than I would ever have done on my own. So thinking about that authority, then the question is, do we have the authority to solve them? So I'm going to go back to the chat and think about what the problems we're working on. Misha talks about the adoption. Sandra's there. How to get membership going, onboarding new members. Yes, like using technology to automate, right? Facilitate membership engagement, absolutely. And that often comes down to it's the technology and more the technology and usability. There's so many things that fall into, and how do you foster that sense of belonging in a digital world? So if we are aware of the problems and the full scope of problems and we consider them up front, that's one of the things that'll help you make a plan to ultimately have a successful technology change, because things won't blindside you as much. So thinking now then about system selection. So you're here, so you are likely thinking about a new system. And I'm going to say my advice here is relatively simple, just to think about what matters in the long run. And so we all start with functionality, absolutely. Some self-reflection to understand what's unique about us, what's critical to us, like really is important to running our business. Those are the elements of functionality, and you make sure that the system can do that before you fall in love with the system. So you start with functionality and you start with cost. Can it do what we need within a cost that's acceptable to us? So we ask those questions up front. I think then when we get to the intangibles, in some ways, that the approach of an organization, of an AMS provider, is critical. I work with a small staff association, and the executive director says that she won't work with somebody she doesn't like, which I think is great. And it's particularly true for a small staff association, because all of your staff are going to be meeting with the people in this AMS provider. So that approach is really important. And then I think the thing that'll bite us in the long run, if it's not there, is what is the support like and what is integration like? Support, because you just want to know what, and this is where you're checking references and you're really kind of talking to your new, the provider companies. Can I pick up a phone and talk to someone? Or if I pick up the phone and I don't get to talk to somebody, will they call me back within a reasonable amount of time? Or do I have to submit a ticket and the response is check our knowledge base, which is a real response that some companies do, right? So what is that level of support? And because that's what will frustrate you. And what is the integration? As small staff associations, it is better for us to kind of have a system we can manage, a smaller system that we can manage. And then when we start to want to grow and expand, it's if we can just integrate something else that's best of breed, maybe a new event management or, you know, a new website, that allows us to grow in a manageable way. It's much better than over purchasing a huge system that we'll never get to grips with. So having something that's really highly integratable, hugely important. Because overall, what's actually critical, what you're really looking to do is to figure out if you can trust this AMS provider. That's why associations leave their current AMS, because they can no longer trust that the company is invested in their success, can solve their problems. So this is where, so that's, it's more than just requirements. Our next S theme is support. And I would like you to think about the support you need way beyond what you will get from your lovely AMS provider, but thinking about this in the biggest way, because this is a big effort and we need to take it seriously. And Sandra, I see your question about what issues lead to breaking trust. I'm going to come back to that, because I want you to think first about your organizational capacity. You have a lot to do. For any technology project, there are many tasks. And while your AMS provider will do a lot of them, particularly if you are small staff and they are geared towards small staff, quite often, though, they may teach you how to configure the technology and work with you so that you're actually configuring more of the functionality. They'll have a project manager, but you also need to keep things moving on your side. You're definitely responsible for your data cleaning and migration. You may have to figure out what the screen is going to look like and what instructions you need and bring in other people to do that. You'll be trained by your provider, but who will train your new staff in the future? And who's going to do refresher training? You're definitely responsible for member communications, for writing standard operating procedures. You're going to be responsible for reports for quite a while. I mean, I know we go into any AMS hoping and expecting that all of our staff will be able to write reports eventually, but it's going to take them about easily 6 to 9 months to figure out the new system and get really comfortable with it and really comfortable how to do their jobs in it and understand the data. So probably you're going to be responsible for report generation for quite some time. And user support, your AMS provider will absolutely have support processes, is that the best way to get the simplest of questions answered within your team? So this is where I want to give a call out to this book, Who Not How. And V is going to put a link to that in the chat. This is a book about figuring out about how to not work to figure out everything yourself. How can I do this thing? How can I code a website? You know, how can I train my staff? And instead, it's about tapping people who can do it well and quickly and easily because they're good at it and they've a passion for it. This book taught me that bringing in people to do work is not a cost, but it's an investment. And I learned it because around the same time, I hired my first virtual assistant. And I really thought, really? Am I going to hire somebody whose entire job is to look after my email and my calendar? And I thought, that's going to be expensive. Of course, in this day and age, a fractional, you're not investing in somebody full time. We started off at a few hours a week. And let me tell you, somebody who was really good at managing routine tasks freed me up to do higher value work. And we really saw the result of that investment. Right. So if we think about this idea, who, not how, and we go back then to all of these things that need to get done, your AMS provider will be really good at providing a lot of this. But even for small associations, and certainly for larger ones, really think about bringing in the expertise you need to support this technology change so that it is done well and effectively, and you can get back to the business of running your organization and providing member value. Because then your technology is in place and we think about sustaining. And my friend Brian said this really wonderful thing recently. He's been in membership for some time. People hate their AMS when they weren't there for implementation. I mean, think how true that is. So how are you going to sustain the knowledge and the enthusiasm and some ideas? I mean, you're going to be training and communications with teams, but I mean, I particularly like having a tips and tricks section of the all staff meeting on a regular basis, so people learn new things. I like desktop consultations, like maybe once a year, you sit down with the team and find out how people are using the system and seeing if there's any way that they could use it better. We need to be intentional about this. So maybe I might hear, if you're here, think about in the chat, how will you sustain your new system? What things will you do to sustain your new system? The one organization we work with. I hear somebody there. So one organization we work with, their CIO once a year gets a re-demo of the system that they're using to see what's being sold to new clients. And that's where they get like lots of great ideas about how to use the system in a good way. So what are ways, if you're thinking about that, to sustain your system? I'm going to let you ponder that and move on to our last area of thinking today, which is about surging ahead. And this again is about having energy around a new system so it doesn't languish. We're adopting these new technologies that give us a lot of power. And how will we really get moving with them? A friend of mine taught me about the bridge of change. The bridge of change. If you're going to introduce change in an organization, first of all, you talk about the bridge and the change, right? You kind of set the knowledge, the expectation, you build the bridge, you put the system in place. You cheer your early adopters who've gone across the bridge and are using the system and really trying things out. and then you support the late adopters, those who are maybe having a little bit more of a struggle. And then finally, this is the interesting thing to me, finally you deconstruct the bridge. We're working with an organization right now that a couple of years ago transitioned from Microsoft products to Google products, like from Microsoft 365 to Google Workspace. But they never fully took down the bridge. So now they're using both Google Docs and Word. Both, even worse, Google Drive and SharePoint, right? So that nobody knows where the documents are or what format they're in. And if you open your Word and Google Docs in the format, yeah. So, and they rely on email to get the most recent version. So they never really finished crossing the bridge, and it was left in place. So if I had one word of advice today about the success of your technology project, it would be about the ownership of the technology, of how it's used to advance your organization. So you have the ownership of managing the bridge. So the champion for a project is so critical, whether it's a system that was launched in 1995 and still brings in millions of dollars for the association that launched it. At the time, we did a lessons learned and recognized that a key element of success was having a champion who was senior enough to argue up the chain for the technology and the budget and the resources, and yet deep enough in the organization to surface all of the issues and make good decisions. I would say have that right champion. Use the modern tools, AI and the modern tools your vendors will provide to you. And who not how, outsource the rest, right? Use your fractional. So maybe today think about who's your champion in your organization. Perhaps you've come to realize today that it's you. You're the champion. I hope it is you. I hope this has been helpful to you and that you enjoy the demos. Have a great event.